Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 9 of Maker's Mic, a music makers podcast presented by LR Bags. Our guest this episode is Joe Pisapia. Joe is a songwriter, a producer, an engineer, a multi-instrumentalist, an all-around utility man, and an artist in the truest sense of the word. Aside from his solo projects and his band, Joe Mark's Brother, Joe has also worked with Katie Lang, Guster, Drew Holcomb, Ben Folds, William Tyler, Josh Rouse, Andy Liu, and the Silver Seas, to name a few. I met up with Joe during his preferred work hours late at night at his beautiful backyard retreat, Middletree Studio, to discuss his newest solo project, Concussion, set to be released this winter.
I grew up in Rahway, New Jersey, which is, people always ask where that is, and it's like 20 minutes, sort of away from Newark Airport. It's like 20 minutes south of Newark Airport. Not too far from the IKEA, exit 13A. And my childhood was, my dad owned a family business called Merchants of Venice. It was a sort of Italian store / catering business and deli. And so my brother and sister and I all worked there, and I started working there when I was 12. I would help my grandmother, she'd have me peel on the garlic and coring the peppers and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And opening the cans of tomatoes, whatever, it was all the grunt work at first. And then I learned how to make sausage, and I learned how to trim roast beefs, because we used to cook our own roast beef and all that. So it was quite an education. A lot of characters coming in and out of there too. It's
Cool.
pretty cool hub of energy.
Yeah.
It's like very different from the music business, dealing with perishable items. It's stress all its own.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad to not have anything that's going to go bad if I don't work on it right away in the studio.
Was there a big Italian community?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, it feels like.
Are you Italian?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm half Italian, Pisapia. In Italy, it's Pisapia,
Uh-huh.
And I'm half Irish, half Italian, like a lot of people we grew up with. And in Jersey, there's a lot of Italian immigrants. My grandparents came over from Italy, and then they all spoke Italian in my dad's store and all that. And it was pretty colorful upbringing. A lot of the guys grew up in Newark, in the ghetto, like in the barrio, in the ghetto, the Italian ghetto, and then they kind of moved to a little more suburban as the generations started.
Have you been to Italy?
Yeah, a couple times, and I was there last year, and I was renting a car for 21 days. I remember I went to the lady at the counter. I said, "Scusi, no parlo italiano," and she said, "It's okay, I speak English." And then I handed her my license. She said, "Pisapia, no parlo italiano. This is Italian." She got all and I was like, I know, there's no excuse. But yeah, I was there last, and it was really awesome. It was really cool.
That's awesome. Was anyone in your family musical? I mean,
my dad's side of the family, I know some of his brothers and stuff played accordion and all that, but they weren't like.
I was gonna make a joke, but I was
totally,
like, no,
because that's an Italian thing to do. But by the time we all were growing up, I would see pictures like, oh, Uncle Johnny played accordion, or Anthony played accordion, but nobody ever talked about it anymore. It was I think it was a phase they went through early on.
When did you start getting into music and playing instruments? Was it around that time?
Yeah, I got my first guitar when I was 9, and then I just, I was sort of like a self-taught, Smoke on the Water. I mean, there were so many riffs back then: Smoke on the Water, Paranoid, Black Sabbath.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
25 or 6 to 4, all those classic guitar riffs that you learn on one string for a while. And then I had a really bad first teacher experience. He was kind of checked out, and he was he had no patience. So he was he would be like, "Practice for a half hour, I'll be right back." And my dad's like, "Wait, he's telling you, he's not teaching you? I'm paying for that." And so then when I was 12, I met this great teacher, Tony Signorella, and he was like, man, he just had tone for days. And back then too, I was growing up in I guess it was the early 80s at this point. It's probably around 1980, and there was so much compositional music going on. He was a wedding band guy,
Uh-huh.
but he had all the hits of the day, like and the hits of the day had a lot of major seven chords, a lot of complex chords in them.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, yeah, I want to learn all that. I don't really. I was more interested in that than the rock stuff, like the more harmonic stuff. And so he showed me all that stuff, and he always just said, "What about your reading? What about your reading?" Because my reading was complete shit, and I was like, Ugh. I'm like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
interested. And he was like, you should work on your reading. But he was the guy too. He's like, what, sing your notes too. He's like, when you're older, you're gonna get more work if you could sing.
Oh,
He
cool.
said, sing if you play a part, if you have a riff, sing the riff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was cool. I was wanting to learn some of the Van Halen stuff too, because Van Halen was so cool and
Yeah.
at that point, and
And
there was a
pretty
lot of the
complex.
hammer-ons.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, and I had to show him how to do that. He's like, he's like, yeah, show me how they're doing that, how the kids are doing that. He was really like curious still. He
Cool.
wasn't like an
Yeah.
old fart or anything. He
Yeah.
was like, okay. And then he would try it, and it's pretty cool.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So did you have early bands or like high school bands?
Oh yeah.
I always love hearing about those.
Yeah, we had our first band was called Sin, SYN.
Ooh, cool.
I know. And we went to Catholic school, and the priest saw that, like, they're like, that's an interesting name, boys. It was my brother and me and this guy Mike on drums. My friend George Adana played. He had like a multi-vox organ, and he played the bass on the organ.
Wow, cool.
And we knew like 4 songs, and we'd stretch them all out. And the first gig we ever had was an end-of-year girls' softball party. And that's the first kiss I ever had with a girl.
That's
because
awesome.
this girl was like super sweet. And I was like, wait, this music thing is really cool. This girl's offering. She's like, do you want a soda? What kind do you want? I'm like, I don't know. Do you have any grape soda? I'll get you one. And then we ended up smooching. It was like awesome. I was like, this is the life for me.
Yeah.
I made the decision
I'm
right
on
then
the
and
right
there.
path. Man, that's
Yeah.
cool. Sin.
Yep,
Did you go to college?
I did. Yep.
Where for music?
Well, I sort of I did music in college, but not as a major. I did business marketing, which is so weird because I'm such a bad
Yeah. Is that
marketer,
paying off?
such an idiot with marketing. And I did religion and philosophy too. Like it was like that was what I was interested in
Uh-huh.
for like my credits, like most of my credits. I could have had a minor in it, but I only wanted to take the courses I wanted. And they were starting this peace studies movement, and I loved the main mentor of it. And I just wanted to take anything he taught because
Yeah.
I just thought he was like sort of he was sort of my foray into the world of a beatnik mentality, like a sort of
Sure.
a beat poet kind of way of thinking, and I just love that guy. So I was like, he turned me on to a whole nother thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you end up landing in Nashville?
Mark, my brother and I got here in 1994, the winter.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a different place back then.
Yeah. I moved
Yeah.
here in 98.
So you guys got here in 98?
Uh-huh. I wasn't too far behind you.
When did you meet Jenny?
Oh gosh, not until 2004, 2005.
Gotcha.
I should know, but
And Mike, where did you come from?
Kentucky.
Kentucky, so not so far.
No, Lexington.
Oh, Lexington is further than Louisville, though. I guess it's like
it's about the same. It's
It
pretty
is?
much the
Okay,
same.
gotcha.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
I moved here right after the tornado went through downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, we were in the studio that day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We came down to look at houses like a week or something after that happened. And because we were doing some research about like where to
Yeah.
live and where we wanted to move to. We chose Antioch, so we didn't do a very good job choosing our spot, but it was affordable, for
Yeah,
for
totally.
4 kids kind of going through college. And
Perfect.
but yeah, I remember seeing some of the windows downtown boarded up, and
Well, you know where you guys live.
yeah.
Do you know about that?
Yeah, it went straight down Woodland Street, right? Like all the way
Straight
to
down Eastland.
Eastland.
Like where Ugly Mugs is and all
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
That used to be like where that parking lot is, where that old house they tore down.
Yeah, yeah.
That used to be thick woods. That
Uh-huh.
whole parking lot was like, it was like the forest over there.
Yeah.
And all that stuff got wiped out. And you could see all the little houses over the hill with blue tarp on it from
Yeah.
like Porter and Riverside and that whole area, like
Yeah.
a block away from where you guys are.
Crazy.
It was insane. And it was like a thick swath of just storm. It looked like a Grandma Moses painting where these little houses on the hill with no trees around it,
Yeah.
like early American settlement kind of thing. It was really spooky for a while.
Strange.
But a lot of people theorize that's how East Nashville became like such a hot neighborhood, is because all those people got insurance money and they went under the knife and like, you know what? While we're here, let's put a sunroom in the kitchen, do a bonus room, do a mud room, do
Yeah.
a room for the washer and dryer, so
Uh-huh.
everybody improved their houses.
Yeah.
And then it was like, it kind of
Oh,
made the
there's some
neighborhood.
cool houses over here.
It's
Yeah.
like
Uh-huh.
what do you say, like the good with the bad, or I don't know, like
Yeah.
the blessing in disguise or whatever.
Because
Yeah.
when I remember, coming to East Nashville. I think my earliest memories of coming to East Nashville was going to Slow Bar.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Where Three Crow is now.
Yep.
And
That was the best.
going to shows over there. But before that, I just remember it as like this area of town that you
Yeah.
stay away from it.
Yeah, it was kind of like I used to always get lost over here because it's so windy.
Yeah.
Anytime like my friends who were early East Nashvillians, I was like, oh, I gotta go to East Nashville.
Yeah.
I really don't know what I don't really know how the streets work before Google Maps and all that stuff.
Right.
Obviously,
Yeah.
right? So you had to really know what you were doing.
Yeah, I remember the first time I stumbled onto Shelby Park. I was like, what is this place?
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. This is beautiful park in the middle of a kind of sketchy neighborhood.
Yeah.
That I could never find again.
No. It was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So 1994, you moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
And then did you just kind of immerse yourself into music as much as possible?
Well, my brother and I had recorded an album before we came here. And we didn't even have a band name yet. And that record didn't even come out until 2000. But we were giving it away to people and saying, hey, do you like this? And it was sort of a really eclectic mix of like power pop with pedal steel in it and like singer-songwriter. I don't know. It was really kind of very eclectic. And so we came down here to form a band primarily. And we just... that's what we just hit the ground running, put ads in the scene. We'd meet people and this and that. And there was a guy named Rick Clark. He's a producer / music supervisor, but he was like, he's really connected with our stuff. And he said, you should guys come down here and check it out. And we came down and check it out. We fell in love with it. We fell in love with Nashville. Went to Memphis. He was there in Memphis. We checked it out. We preferred Nashville as a place to be. And Nashville has a way of seducing you. When we came down, we saw... I don't know if you know the producer Brad Jones, but Brad Jones's band was playing, and it was like, what? It was so much cooler than anything we had seen in New York at that time. Because in New York in the early 90s, it was very much like really heavy metal or rap and metal combined. It was like super aggressive. And we were like, we wanted to make like flowery pop. And there wasn't a lot of big scene for it there. We didn't know about it anyway. So when we came down here, we're seeing this stuff like, oh, that's kind of what we want to do. And so we had a band house and we put together the band. We had Joe Mark's Brother was the name of our band. And we did we sort of built up a good local following. And we had the shows at 12th and Porter. We went on the road, did like Little Rock and Memphis and, I don't know, up to Chicago and stuff, New York and all that, Atlanta, all those places. But that was our main thing. You know what I mean? That was what we were wanting to do. And it was, people kept saying, this is not a band town, everybody wants to be professional and get paid. And somehow we found people that were interested.
Yeah. I think it's a band town now.
Nowadays it is. Yeah. Back then people kept saying, oh, and people kept telling us there's no local live scene here. And we're like, why not? There's 13 colleges here.
Yeah.
So we would just print flyers. We were waiting tables every time we had table of young people.
And there's a billion musicians here.
Yeah. We would just give them the flyer and be like, come out and see us. We were shameless about it,
Yeah.
So I guess I probably was pretty good at marketing.
So your marketing paid off a little bit.
We used to even take our flyers and put them behind the produce and Kroger and stuff. Now I know like that people would be like, guys, back then we were just idiots. We would just do
So
guerrilla marketing.
yeah. So it was you and your brother Mark.
So originally it was me and my brother Mark, and then we had this guy named Pete Langella, and Pete is a great musician. He's a great guitar player and bass player, but he played bass. And then David Mead, went on to have his whole singer and songwriter career, and now
Sure.
has El Macho and all that,
Oh yeah,
Butterfly,
yeah. Uh-huh.
and that was the band originally. And then in '98, Hags, we sort of split up the band because Pete left and David went to do his solo stuff, and then Hags, James Haggerty came down. My brother and Hags had played in school together in a band,
Oh, okay.
so it was like perfect fit.
Yeah. When did you get involved with Guster and Katie Lang? Like, when did that start? When did people start seeking you out, or did you?
Well, it was I'm trying to think when one of the first things I did. I always loved recording. Like it was always one of my favorite parts. I used to think it was my favorite part. And now I'm realizing it was a good, like I love both performing and recording. But like back then, the studio was so much rarer, right? You remember, Mike, because it's like it was before Pro Tools. Hell, it was even before ADATs.
Yeah.
You used to have a 24-track machine or maybe a 32-track digital machine, whatever they had. You
Right.
used to have professional equipment with a console and really great supply of microphones in a room. So getting in the studio just felt like the most exciting thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so I always had so much of a desire for it. I was dating a girl at the time, Allison Pierce, and her and her sister had a band called the Pierces, and then they got a record deal, and they had done some demos, and I heard the demos, and I was like, I don't know, these demos, I don't think they sound as good as they should. I don't think they capture you guys. And then I said, well, how much did you pay for these? And when she told me, I was like, what? It was more than what we spend on our records nowadays,
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I'll do it for 1/10 of that.
Yeah.
I just want to help you.
Uh-huh.
I just want it to, and so I did that. And the A&R guy really liked me. He was like, Joe, you really, your demo's got them a deal. And so, and one of the songs, we took the demo and made it into the master. And so he said, I want you to produce this record, but because nobody knows about you, I was probably about 29 years old at the time. I was just, he said, you got to bring in a real producer, quote
Right.
unquote, like somebody who's got a track record, who's had some success, and you guys will co-produce, and he'll be like you could be the junior producer or whatever, do the music part.
Yeah.
I was like, absolutely. I chose Roger Moutinho, who's one of my heroes, and like,
Yeah.
and I just learned so much working with him, and that was like my first foray into producing. And I was like, well, I want to hire Joe Mark's brother to be the band because I have a musical relationship with them. We're already like challenging ourselves, and we speak the same language. And he was like, yeah, let's bring him in, and it was really a great experience. And then after that, a couple years after that, same thing happened. One of my good buddies, Dan Tyler, who's been a mentor of mine, his son is William Tyler, the guitar player.
Yeah. I know
So
William.
yeah, so Dan was like, well, we were friends, and he would always try to teach me about songwriting and about simplicity and all these different things about like, he's had a lot of hit songs. He would just say, man, look, and tell me, try to just be a mentor in that way. And I heard his demos, and I said, man, these demos, so you do demos for all your songs? He's like, I tried to, because in case they get a cut. And I said, well, who does them for you? And then he's like, well, I got this guy in Franklin and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I kind of bluffed. I was like, I could do that. He's like, you could do that? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, how much? I'm like, I don't know. Pay me $150. He's like, oh, I'm not going to pay you that. I'll pay you what I pay that guy, $500 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Back in 99, whatever. That was good money. I was like, oh boy. I said, all right, sure, I'll do it. And I learned like just nose to the grindstone,
Yeah.
And then after that, I just started doing record after record, like little tiny no budget record or little, and I did my own record. I had my first solo record. I learned a lot doing that. And when the Guster guys heard my first Okay, before that, the Guster guys had heard the Joe Marks Brother record that Brad Jones produced. Once again, Brad Jones, who was really one of my biggest mentors coming here, and still is.
Yeah.
And so those guys heard that record because both people try to take credit for it. Josh Rouse takes credit for giving it to him, and David Gerke, who played drums with Josh Rouse. Dude, Josh didn't give it. I gave it. They both fight about it. It's cute. But anyway, they liked it, and they were like, dude, they were like, you guys got to open up for us. And that's how we got to know Guster, is Joe Marks Brother opened up for them.
Oh.
Like on two big tours.
Cool.
And it was, it was so fun. We had the best time. We really connected with a lot of fans. And when I was working on my solo record in the year 2001, the end of 2001, those guys were working on their record called Keep It Together. And they were using Roger Moodno.
Yeah.
And they were at Sound Emporium on Belmont. I was down the street. I used to live on Belmont. So Ryan would ride his bike over, and we'd have coffee or whatever. And one day we wrote a song in my apartment because I was doing my record Daydreams, which is super folky. And I'm like, hey, you know what I'm into? I'm into this folky thing. I want to use banjos, and I want to use mandolins, and I want to use organ pedals instead of bass. So we're on the floor playing the organ pedals with our fists, you know what I mean? And we just did this little demo of this song, Jesus on the Radio, that we just wrote in an afternoon. And that went on that record.
Yeah.
And after that, they were like, hey, would you come out with us for 3 or 4 months just to launch this record? We put too many overdubs on it, and we can't do it with 3 guys. And I said, 3 or 4 months? And at that point, they're in a tour bus with like techs and roadies and all that. I was like, I don't even have to lift my equipment? I'm like, sign me up. That sounds like a vacation. Of course, long story short, that turned into 8 years.
Wow.
Because, when we started changing everything, and that, what I mean? And then we started writing together, and it was just very organic. We were like, oh, well, what if we added this to that? What if we put keyboards on this song? And, at first I was like, I'm going to be Peter Holsapple is to REM. Like just the guy in the back doing whatever extra needs to be done.
Yeah. And
then it just kind of, it kept getting more and more involved. And then we were writing together. I was co-producing their records with them. And, so that was cool.
You can play a lot of instruments, right?
I could sort of BS my way through a lot of instruments.
Okay.
Like, to be honest, like for me, when I was doing my record Daydreams, I had more time than money. And so what I would do is I would just borrow instruments from my friends. Like, hey, George Bradfield, can I borrow your stand-up bass? Sure. Yeah. Can I borrow that banjo? And I would just I had all these instruments at my disposal, and I would just sit there and peck away until and for me, it was like, even stand-up bass, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'd play it till I got what I wanted out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if it took me a little longer, if I was up all night doing it, and some of the stuff I wanted to be kind of raw too. I was working on this one piano piece, I remember on that record called Dancing Partner, and I was working on it. It took me a whole weekend to play the part because I used to have Cubase, and I was such an idiot. I really didn't know about comping or any of that stuff.
Right.
I was like, I can't really punch this in. And I wasn't adept enough at editing because it was my first computer. I never worked on a computer before. And I was so used to the 8-track machines or something where it's you kind of got to get it. And if nobody else is engineering, guess what? You got to get it as a performance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I would just play it till I got it. And if it took me 3 days, it took me 3 days and one part, you know what I mean? But it was, I thought there was a point where I'm like, maybe I should bring in a piano player. I thought they're not going to play it the same way. They're not going to do it the rubato way that I want. It's going to sound too clean. And so that's how I got decent at playing a lot of instruments. Now, since then, I did get a lot better at instruments, but because that was 17 years ago.
Yeah.
But just by doing this, just by hearing a part, doing it,
Yeah.
So
feeling it out.
Yeah.
Cool.
I still don't really understand mandolin the way the tuning and stuff, but I'm like, just put your fingers down. It's oh, that's how that works. And to me, the mystery almost adds. The mystery brings forth creativity because you're when you're surprised, it feels like this is a new exciting instrument that does different things with my fingers. And
all
so
all these crazy sounds.
Yeah, you come up with different inversions and different chords and stuff. The way your fingers go, and you're oh, that's how Maggie May has that kind of vibe because it's super easy to do, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you play the accordion?
I I had an accordion for a while, and then it got all moldy in the basement. It's like, man, that's a health hazard.
Yeah.
But I'm not bad at it. I'm not good at it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm
Just
I'm
curious.
pretty good right-handed keyboard player.
Tell me about some of the other bands that you've worked with.
Sure, sure. I'll tell you about. Can I tell you about the first record I ever produced
Yeah,
by
of
myself?
course. Yeah.
Okay, so the first record I ever produced, and it was like everything. It was like this. It was almost mythological, and I'll tell you why it was mythological. I was heading up to the Northeast, and I was on this mission, and I was like, I was going to play the living room. I was going to play up in Vermont, this and that. And I'm taking the Blue Ridge Parkway up. I love the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I'm listening to the Lord of the Rings book on tape, and I never read it as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, this is such a mythological story and so heavy about all these things about life. And anyway, I get a call on the way up there, and it's like this woman I know, and she's like, listen, I don't know what you're doing coming up, but I want to have a meeting with you about producing this band that just got it. They just got accepted to be part of the NACA showcase. And I don't know if you remember NACA, and I should be able to say what it stands for, but NACA was like, it was basically like this organization that sort of harnessed like the bands that were chosen at NACA
Uh-huh.
were like all the college buyers would come out to these conferences, and if you got a
Okay.
showcase at NACA, it was like you were in.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. That's how like Guster got his start.
Yeah.
That's how like Jump Little Children got their start.
Sure.
All these big bands from the
Uh-huh.
'90s had
Big
great college followings
college bands.
because
Yeah.
they went through the NACA circuit, so it's a big deal. But when she told me what kind of music it was, it's a boy band, and I'm like, I don't know anything about that. You know what I mean? We were like this angular power pop band at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, yeah, I'm not probably the guy for that. So like, lo and behold, I'm coming back. My car breaks down, and it's like a shit show breakdown. It's like, we don't know if you need a new engine, but you definitely need a new valve head, and we don't know if you need pistons, but it's going to be like at least $3,000.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, and I remember thinking,
Like, that's more than my car
yeah,
costs.
totally. It was more than it was worth.
Yeah.
And I was probably 30 years old at the time, and I was like living so bohemian. I'm like, you know, I should probably have more than 50 or $100 in the bank. So turned out I was like, hey, you still got that boy band? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I came back to Nashville, and my grandmother had passed away, and my mother said, I said, Ma, I was like, I got to do this to get out of debt. I got to get my car out of the shop. And it was in there for months. So I said, can I borrow a little money to buy some speakers? And she's like, how much do you need? I said, probably $500. You know what I mean? She said, well, your grandmother left money for you guys. I was going to give it to you. And it was about $1,000 she gave to us. So I had $1,000. I got speakers. I got like a headphone thing, whatever I got, a couple of headphones. And I had the bare bones, low rent system.
Uh-huh.
And these guys came, and I'm like thinking, I don't know anything about it. But we sat in my apartment together in Belmont and made this really fun record. And to this day, I really think it holds up. And I was like trial by fire engineering. I didn't even know how to do, any of that. I did my own demos and stuff, but I would never put them out.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you, like when you have that fire lit under you,
Uh-huh.
you kind of step up and say, all right, I need this to be professional, and I want to learn and get it as good as I can. And to this day, I stand by the record. I think it's really good. And you know what? The two brothers in the band, it's called 1222 was the name of the band.
Okay. I was going to ask.
I'm still really good buddies with them. And they just, whenever they come through town, they like sleep over, and, we have a listening party of whatever they're working on. I just produced another project that one of the guys is in, and we're friends for life. Like
That's
it was
cool.
a great experience,
Cool.
Yeah. They were young kids, like 19 and 21. And
Uh-huh.
we had a fire pit in the back. Dude, can we burn this? I'm like, no, you can't burn that. It's furniture. I don't know. It looks like it's garbage. I'm like, it doesn't belong to me. You can't just burn anything you want. They were such cute kids,
Yeah. That's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about this place, Middletree Studio.
Yeah.
This is one of the most beautiful studios,
Oh, cool.
especially privately owned.
Yeah.
It's so cool in here. It's such a good vibe.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
How long have you had this place? And
Well, when we had done that Guster record, Ganging Up on the Sun, we went to Sound Emporium to track, and we used to take the Guster projects back then. We used to take a lot of time, and the budgets were bigger, so we would, I think, for better for worse, those guys had come from that big budget world, and they were like, "This is what we do in the studio. We take our time and get it right."
Yeah.
And so we would track for like a month, do the tracking, and then we'd do the overdubs for a couple months. You know what I mean? It was crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
because nowadays it's like a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You do everything so fast.
Yeah.
So, so we were doing, and then we went back to my old place, and I had made my attic into my music room, and I was a bachelor at the time, so I would. I had snakes going all throughout the house. And we just living room was mic'd up, the bathroom was mic'd up. You know, it was a good echo chamber or whatever. Like everything was mic'd up. So, but I knew I couldn't cut there properly, and I knew I couldn't really mix there properly. So I always dreamed, like, wouldn't it be great to have a studio I could do A to Z, from cutting to mixing and everything in between.
Yeah.
And so I always dreamed about that, you know. And I had bought this big console, I have a Ward Beck console. It's super heavy. It takes like 4 guys to lift it 2 inches off the ground. And I bought 2 of them so I could make the best of into one, because they were this one's from 1980. The other one was probably from the same era. And I wanted to be able to do drums, right? And, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was always a dream. And even with the Guster projects, we had been in so many studios. And my favorite studio probably I've ever been in is this place called Allaire. It's in upstate New York. It's in, I want to say, Ashokan, New York.
Okay.
On the top of a mountain in a mansion, and like high ceilings. Like the ceilings in one of the studios are like, I don't know, I'm not even exaggerating. They're like 40 feet high, 50 feet high.
Cool.
But it's in an old mansion, and so the floorboards would squeak. Like at night, you'd sneak out on the thing. We'd be joking around. It's like, shh, you know, because they're cutting a piano in there. Like, you know, the floorboard would go like 40 feet that way. And so it'd be like, it's like, damn it, right in the middle of a take. So I realized no place is perfect. I realized, and there was like, we could hear the rain in there. Like there was rain where it was like, oh, we're trying to do these quiet vocal parts, and it's raining, so we're gonna have to wait.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, this is the most expensive studio I'll probably ever be in, and it still has caveats.
Right.
So don't worry about having a perfect place. Just get a room that works.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I just kept thinking about it for years and years. Yeah. And we were looking in like Whites Creek and Jolton, and like looking for a house with a 3-car garage. And this place had an unfinished, it had a shed in the back, and we made it into a studio by building the ceilings high, putting like a, yeah.
So this used to be a shed.
This was a shed. The studio was a shed that was like for tools and stuff, like the lawnmower and wheelbarrows and stuff like that. And then we just basically gutted it.
This is your dream studio.
It really is.
And it's right in your backyard.
Yeah. When I was traveling last year in Europe, I was gone for 7 weeks, and I kept waking up having this recurring dream about this place. And I would wake up and be like, no, that's real. You know?
Yeah.
And it would make me so excited. It made me really miss it and feel like really excited. Like, what could be done in there that I haven't done? How could I take more advantage of it? You know?
Where'd the name come from?
When we got here, we bought this house in 2008. And this street was like totally different. There were like abandoned houses across the street. You know, it was like, I'm like, who owns that house? Anybody live there? Oh, no. Rats walking around and stuff, you know what I mean? It's like, and my wife's like, we're going to buy this house. I'm like, trust me. But that year in 2008, there was a drought for like a year or two before. And all these trees in our yard were dead. We have a big yard. So we had to do tree work. And one of the trees was this huge hackberry that was so huge that even though it was dead. And even though it had no leaves on it, it was still providing all the shade just from its limb structure. And like it would take 2 people to hug across it and maybe touch fingertips.
Wow.
So they were cutting it down, and the guy who owned the tree company was like, hold on a minute. Because they were doing that slice where they do the V slice and then they're going to pull it down.
Yeah.
And he said, hold on, wait. He's like, do you have a camera? I was like, yeah. And it was before even the phone cameras. You know, back then it was like I said, I have a digital camera. Would you take my picture by this? I've been doing tree work for 20 years. I never saw this. and it was the tree, which was huge and wide, was hollow and only about maybe 6 inches thick. And then in the middle was another tree growing up in the middle of it.
Oh,
And
crazy.
it was so cool for like, this is even at the base of the tree. It was like that. But I just thought that was so cool. The middle tree,
middle tree.
Yeah.
Cool. Tell me about some of your favorite instruments that you own. Like maybe,
Yeah.
let's narrow it down to guitars.
I will.
How many guitars do you have?
I have too many. I don't. Only jocks count their guitars. What's that from? It's like only jocks count how many drinks they have. Yeah, I'm definitely afflicted with the guitar.
You have quite a collection.
I do. I was gonna talk about one of my favorite new instruments is that pedal steel guitar, which is I've tried so many different pedal steels and boy, it's such a complicated instrument as it is, and so finding one that you actually connect with is super challenging. Unlike a guitar, where I feel like guitar, you kind of get used to a guitar.
Yeah.
Guitars have idiosyncrasies, and they're like become really easy to work around. But when pedal steels have idiosyncrasies, it becomes like hell.
You're just screwed.
Yeah. And my first guitar was a great guitar, push-pull Emmons, but I could never get it in tune right. It was like I had conflicts, and it was before I knew people like Mike Cass, who's a great Emmons guy. But this new Showbud Pro 1 I have, not new, but it's from the 70s, and it's been totally gone through and totally worked. All the changes are just like I want them, and they tune really well. And
yeah,
that is the most addictive instrument is pedal steel. Like, there's so much joy in just playing it. And even though it's like the most humbling learning curve of any instrument, when you do get a beautiful sound out of it, it's like, okay, I'm coming back tomorrow and I'm going to wrestle with this again. Like, you can't wait to get back to it.
Yeah.
It's really addictive. So even for the past week, I've just had it plugged in and I've been coming out for like 3 or 4 hours a night, just sitting with it. Yeah. And then I'll say about one guitar, I've really been sort of a fan of the Stratocaster lately. I've been playing the Stratocaster a lot.
Cool.
It's just, I feel like it's such a weird guitar. I got in the mid 90s or early 90s, but it's a mid 80s Japanese reissue, a 52 reissue.
Okay.
And I remember my friends were like, you got to get an 80s Japanese reissue Strat. And man, it's a good one. It's such a good guitar.
Let's talk a little bit about your songwriting process. Your music has a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
From the stuff I've heard, there's a lot of stuff sonically happening in there.
Yeah.
Describe your songwriting process.
Yeah. I feel like in the deepest sense of my calling or whatever, or maybe my strengths, like I've always been primarily a songwriter. That's been my primary thing. And I think the reason I got decent at guitar is because I was a frustrated songwriter, and then I'd get sidetracked into the guitar, like play stuff over and over, and like be like, nothing's happening, nothing's coming. There's no lyrics on the page.
Yeah,
I'm only at verse 1, and I would just get sidetracked.
Just keep playing,
and then I'd have my little cassette recorder and record that, and then I'd be like, oh, that's even cooler than what I was working on. And it's almost like when you become tricked into like, out of your mind, basically. When you get out of your mind, and then all of a sudden stuff happens.
When you forget about it.
Yeah, when you forget about it, just kind of happens organically, and then you look back and like, that was actually cool. I wasn't thinking. I didn't know that I was doing something, but something was happening. For me, and I'm always trying to get better at songwriting, and I guess for me, it's like, I feel like the idea has to excite me enough to want to finish it. So I feel like the ones that I actually get finished maybe are the more elaborate ones, or the more like, I don't know, maybe the more quirky ones, because I feel like they sound like something new, or they sound like something that feels unique to me. Or something that makes me feel odd sometimes I really like. Like if it makes me feel like I'm uncomfortable, I really like it. I don't know, it feels like I don't know, it feels exotic or something, you know?
Some of your songs make me feel a little odd sometimes.
Yeah. I could see
But
that.
I like it.
And then I and then I always want to be truthful in the lyric, you know, like really um as honest as I could be, you
Yeah.
know,
Uh-huh.
whatever that means. I'm not a good like story songwriter. I've never been. I know in Nashville, like a lot of people write these amazing story songs or like the real folk people, you know, and I'm like, oh, I never got good at that, you know. I
Yeah.
think that I really admire it, but it's never been my style.
Yeah. You seem like such a tinkerer, you know?
Yeah.
Like you just play with all these instruments and you just come out here and you spend time messing around with different sounds. And I was just wondering if that is sort of the way that songs get sparked in your brain, or if you, I mean, do you sit down on your couch with an acoustic guitar and like try to strum out a song and write it that way?
Yeah.
Because
Yes and
that's the way
yeah.
most people do it.
Like I feel like my songwriting comes in fits and starts. Like it's like even last week, like I just wrote 3 songs. Like out of nowhere, I come out here and I have to do something else, and then I just pick up the guitar and the song falls out. It's like yeah, and I just write it down. It may sometimes lyric and all.
Yeah.
Um, then sometimes it's like this is a good idea for later, and so I just nowadays, for better or for worse, I just put them on the voice memos. You know, like a
Uh-huh.
lot of people
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So, because even though it's I'm in the studio, I feel like if I'm gonna put up mics and stuff, I don't want to just have I don't want to have no idea what I'm doing.
Right.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have no idea, and I just put stuff down, and it becomes something later. But um,
That makes sense.
yeah. But a lot of times I am more organic. I am more like just sit with the piano or sit with the guitar. I like to write on piano a lot. I'm not very good as a player.
Yeah.
You know, I could, but maybe if it takes me a long time to write it, I've almost learned how to play it. And so
Hmm.
a lot of stuff on my record is stuff I've written on piano and then played piano on. And maybe
Okay.
it started there,
Yeah.
you know?
Let's talk about your new project, Connection.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just tell me a little bit about how it came about, the idea behind it.
A couple of things. Um, I was in Europe for like 7 weeks last year and I did like a stream of consciousness kind of calling 3 weeks before I left. Because I had a show, I had a couple of things booked. I had a show in London, and then I had Jenny and I were going to meet, and we were going to go to Tuscany like a month and a half later for like this retreat. And I thought, well, why would I fly home and then fly back? What if I just like after the gig in London, which was like 3 days rehearsal and one show, I'm like, why don't I just stay there? So I put a thing on Facebook 3 weeks before I left. Hey, anybody want to do a house concert or a little show or anything? And then the whole thing kind of came together on this journey, and I was just meeting people, and this guy named Stefano Barotti in Italy like put together this whole little tour with he and his producer, but posters and everything, and I got press out of it, all this stuff, and it was just on the fly. He said, "I will open up for you," and I said, "Oh man, this is a great honor," you know. The whole thing was just, and I was so inspired. I had like long train rides and staying in different Airbnbs on different beautiful mountain lakes and stuff, and I was just basically had half my record came out of that experience of just being like open and inspired. I realized something like of all the currencies for a musician, like time, money, all the things you can get, fame, fortune, really the thing everybody wants is inspiration. And you can't put a price tag on it. I work with so many bands that are like really popular, but they're so busy they haven't been inspired. Then they want to come into the studio and and they come to a person like me and they're like they need to write, they need to be inspired. Well, what are you inspired about? I don't know. You know, they've just been too busy and too overwhelmed. And I realized like no, that's really meaningful, to just be quiet and you know be almost like I don't know, like I would wake up and be like, I don't know where I'm going to go tonight. I'm just going to look at the map and I'm going to try a city that I've heard about, you know, drive there. And then I'm going to
Yeah.
find a cheap hotel or an Airbnb and I'm going to eat at this place. I'm going to, you know, try the food. And it all was like way better than I thought it was going to be. And so when I came home from that trip, I was like, I was raring to go, you
Uh-huh.
know? And so when I came back, I felt the other thing that's significant. When I was in Italy, at the end of my trip, I had a concussion, right? And it was really the first time I ever had a concussion, and I was really kind of zonked.
Yeah.
So for about a week, and we're at this retreat, we're at this beautiful Italian villa for this retreat. The only thing I could do is lay in bed with the shades drawn and the lights off for about a week.
Oh man.
And the only reason I couldn't stay longer than was we only had a week booked there. I wasn't really ready to leave.
Yeah.
I felt nauseous, everything, and I couldn't look at my phone. I couldn't look at the computer. I couldn't read anything. Everything was overwhelming. So when I came home, um, my whole life felt different. And so really that whole time I had to behave myself, like no beer, no alcohol, no, go to bed this time. Don't look at Facebook. Don't, and so I think I was already like I was experiencing life in a very subtle way, almost because I had no choice. It was like you have
Yeah.
to do this,
Uh-huh.
And I always think maybe the angels were like, dude, we want you to just settle down and and get out of your distractions for a minute.
Yeah.
So on the heels of that, when I finally started feeling better, I was like, all these ideas had come to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in the studio and I was like, it first started out like, I'm like, I don't know, I'm just gonna go out to the studio. My wife goes to bed early, so I
Yeah.
come out here about 10 at night and start tinkering.
Uh-huh.
Oh, this is something, this is something. Let me pull up this. Let me finish this one idea I had. Oh yeah. And then all of a sudden, and I'm like, had momentum. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got 6 songs. These are songs. This is really starting to be a record. And as I started to realize it was a record, the nights started getting longer and longer. And I would start coming out here later and late for later. And until like midway through the record, my schedule was 11 p.m. till 7 or 8 in the morning.
Wow.
And it stayed like that for 3 months. There was this one song on the record called Better Friends. And this was right when I started to reach the tipping point of like, this is like, I'm totally nocturnal now. And I'm recording the song. And I'm like, and having a whole night of quietude, no texting, no emails, nothing distracting coming in, no Facebook or anything.
Yeah.
By the time the sun would come up, first of all, I would hardly notice it because this way is north, so it'd still be like I'd be facing that way. I'd turn around and see the light. I'd be like, "Oh man, it's that late already."
Uh-huh.
And so I remember the song "Better Friends." I just took the guitar, I put a mic on my vocal, put a mic on the guitar, and just started performing it. And I was like, "Oh, it's 10 a.m. I should be in bed." I went in and I told my wife, for some reason she wasn't up yet. I was like, man, if I would have just spent another hour, I could have had that song. But I felt weird about like how late it was that I hadn't been asleep. And she's like, you're already screwed. Just go
Just
with
go
it.
finish it.
Yeah, just go with it. And I was like, yeah, but I'm tired. Then I've touched the bed. I'm like,
Right.
I'm so
Oh,
tired.
yeah.
And so the next night I came in, I thought hopefully I could pick up where I was. And I did. And I was able to like sort of tie it all together, the performance. And I still, that first verse up to the second chorus, I think, or the first verse and chorus are from that original time when I just written it. I mean, I
Crazy.
just was gonna sing it. And it was, I gotta say, like as far as inspiration goes, I felt like I was being inspired for the first time in my life with this record.
Wow.
I know it sounds weird. I was really felt inspired, and it
Yeah.
stayed like that for a really long time, and I never had that feeling before.
That's so
That's
cool.
why I was like, sort of like, that's part of the reason I trust it. Like, you know how like as an artist or as a person who makes music, you want to think your stuff is good. You want to believe that. And then certain days you do, and certain days you're like, I don't even know if it's any good. But whenever I go back to that feeling that I had when I was making it, I'm like, I know that I never had that feeling before. So I'm going to honor and own that because it
Mhm.
was real. And my whole thing was like, what if this feeling I'm having, it was like a buzz feeling. It was like, this is like a buzz. I want to share that with others. I hopefully that comes through the recording and make
Wow.
somebody else feel that.
Yeah.
It uplifts somebody.
It's really profound.
Yeah, it was profound to me. I was feeling it as a profound
Mhm.
experience. It was like something that was new to me.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I love it. What else can you share about it? I heard the world has lost its faith.
Oh yeah, when I released just that rough demo of it because not demo, it was just a rough mix of it
Mhm.
because certain things were happening in the world, and I thought I just want to share this song at this point.
Yeah, it's a really poignant,
Yeah.
cool song.
Oh, thanks, man.
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, maybe talk a little bit about your pledge campaign? Or
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't want to
Absolutely.
sound super promotional, but
Listen, as a marketing major, because Jenny always, my wife's always like, you didn't even talk about your pledge campaign in this video. I'm like, I always get caught up in the moment of the real thing and then forget, like, you have to actually talk about this stuff too.
Yeah.
But
let's hear about it.
yeah, so I'm doing a pledge music campaign basically in order to, what somebody had called it, and I said, it's weird. It's crowdfunding. It's crowdfunding, which is great because, you know, for better or worse, and I don't want to be one of those guys that says we don't make any money in the music business anymore, because it feels like a victim thing to say, but in a way, it's kind of true. I mean, it's like with Spotify and all these different streaming services. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying we've all had to adjust to a totally different way of getting paid as songwriters, as musicians, as artists. It's definitely not getting easier for anyone. And I used to have aversions to like asking for something, like asking for a pledge. It feels like, oh, something inside me is cringing at that. And so, but what I thought of is like my desire to share this music and have people actually hear it is um, sort of overrides my cringeworthiness of asking for people to spread the word or people to pre-order the record or anything else I have on the site. Um, and so I feel like I feel validated in that, as when somebody said to me, it's not just crowdfunding, it's crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? That's it. For one of the things I heard Alan Watts say, and I said this in my pledge campaign, for anything that you're into, like if you're into a specific thing, like your wife is into her stuff, her art, my wife is into her art, I'm into my art, and like it's not like I'm going to be the next Coldplay, but there may be thousands of people out there that really, really like what I do, and I just want to find them.
Yeah.
Just like there might be thousands of people that like this kind of art, and if you could find those people and connect with them, that's the whole thing. It's like then you don't have to change to try to fit in.
Yeah.
Just be yourself. One of the things I realized when I was making this record, my buddy sent me this track. It was like we used to have 8-track. Now they're very coveted. The Tascam 388. It had the built-in reel-to-reel. They're like highly coveted right now. But we did all these recordings on there, and he sent me this like weird Latin jazz thing that I was trying to do that had all these power pop chords, but Latin jazz in it. And I was like, dude, I've always been that weirdo. Like that's been always my thing. And now I wanted, and so it made me sort of embrace myself. I was like, this is nothing new. Like I've always wanted to try different motifs or whatever, and I should just embrace it more rather than be embarrassed of it. You know what I mean? Or try to like, no, well, I should reel it in now that I'm older. It's like, it's only getting worse. I'm only trying to let my freak flag fly higher than ever, So yeah, for better, for worse. But I feel like when you really connect, right? It's like almost with a girl. Like let's say you go up to a girl, you're like, you put on airs or whatever, and maybe you go on a date with her. Maybe she buys it. But then after a while, this is not the dude. This is not who you sold.
Right.
And then you're never going to have anything real with her. So I'd rather have a real connection with fans and do the music I want to do than try to water it down and then not really ever have that relationship. And then you don't feel like you get each other, And so that's the whole point of the pledge campaign for me, is like, I want to spread the word. And it'd be really helpful if, the funding pays for things like all the nuts and bolts, like paying the musicians who played on it, the artwork, the mastering, the manufacturing, all that stuff. And then hopefully even some publicity so that more and more people could hear of it, And so that's my goal,
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any jokes?
Oh.
Do you keep any jokes like stored?
I just had a good one too. Just had it. I was going to tell my niece because it was good for all purpose. It was a good all purpose joke, and I forgot it. Damn it.
Okay, no worries.
I do have one. I can say one.
Okay.
Okay, so guy goes to the doctor, and he said, we don't know what it is, but we should probably do some tests. So he's sitting on the table. He says, I'll be right back. Next thing you know, the door opens a little bit and a dog walks in. Dog comes up to him, wagging his tail, sniffing him, this and that. And dog walks out and a cat walks in. Cat jumps up on the table, meowing at him and stuff like this. And he's sitting there in his gown going, what's going on? The cat walks out. Doctor comes in. He said, well, it looks like it must be benign. He's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, the CAT scan and the lab report came back normal. That's horrible.
Give me some of your Deserted Island albums.
All right. This is a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, one of which, because I feel like I can almost narrow it down to a top 5 as the older I get.
Wow.
I'm gonna give you 2.
Okay.
The Zombies, Odyssey, and Oracle, which I feel like I can never finish studying that record. It's just such a masterpiece. And I'm gonna say Katie Lang Ingenue. It's funny, she's on the Ingenue tour right now because it's like the 25th anniversary. But when I heard that record, it changed my life because it was what I loved most about it. Well, not most about it. I always loved her, but it was like it was so eclectic, and she was using pedal steel in this really revolutionary way. Greg Leese was the steel player, and I've talked at length with her about that record because I'm such a fan of it, and she told me crazy stories.
Did you didn't have any part in that one?
No, I was still a kid not kid, but I was like, that record came out years before I even met her. So being able to produce her was like, okay, she's responsible for definitely one of my top 10, if not one of my top 5 records of all time. So it was a huge honor. You know what I mean? And I couldn't have dreamed that would even be a reality. You can't dream that stuff up, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I've always thought she's like one of my favorite artists of all time because she's kind of always done whatever she wanted.
We never touched on her. How did your connection with her come about?
I will say, like, she heard my record Daydreams, which, hundreds of people heard that record, but maybe 100 of the coolest people heard it, I've met so many cool people just because of that record. And she was one of them. And she connected with, she told me the songs that she specifically connected with on it. And she's like, yeah, because of that, I want to write with you and, this and that. And
did you freak out?
Yeah, I was like, wow. And so when we first got together, I promised myself I wouldn't listen to any of her music before she got here because I didn't want to get psyched out. I wanted to keep a fresh idea. And then the morning before she came, I just pulled her up on the internet. I'm like, oh my God, 4 Grammys. The whole thing. I'm like, this is so like, I'm not worthy or whatever. What am I going to bring in? And I was jamming around this song for a while, like this one idea. I was like, I really love this idea. And I heard it as like a French pop kind of vibe, and I brought it to her and she was like, I love it. And really, it wasn't like as easy as that. We actually sat down in a room and had like a conversation for about 3 hours over coffee and just talked about life. And then we went to have lunch and we came back and wrote a song. And that's kind of the way I really like to do my co-writing is I really like to, it's like, I feel like it's so weird to just be like, what do you want to write about? What do you want to write about?
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on in your life?
Let's just hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, let's hang out. See if we like each other. See if we're thinking about similar things.
Yeah.
And if what's tugging at our emotions right now. And then write something real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
it was honestly like almost a fairy tale. It just kept getting better and better with her because she said, well, you have a studio. Let's cut these songs. Let's demo them. And then we did, and she's like, bring a steel player, bring a keyboard player. I'm like, hold on a minute. I just opened the studio. I was like, I don't even know how to use my patch bay yet. It's like, would you mind if we just did a stripped down 3-piece tracking session and then I'll fill it and then I'll do the overdubs later? And she's like, okay, she's like, that's smart. And so after she left, my brother came, played drums. Lex Price came, played bass. I played acoustic in the control room and she sang upstairs. And she said, okay, well, finish them up. Show me how you'd produce them. And I was like, I went as flowery, as romantic as I really heard the stuff. And even my wife's like, that's too romantic. You can't put that in there. It's too gypsy or it's too this. And I was like, you know what? I want her to know what I'm about. And if she likes my style, then that's why she should like me. And
Yeah.
not just because I'm pretty good at this, that, or the other.
Right.
I don't want her to hire me for craft. I want her to hire me for my creative instincts.
Yeah.
Or, intuition.
Yeah.
And so, and it worked out,
Cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool story. I really like that Case Langevier's album.
Yeah, me too.
So good.
Yeah.
Is there a band you listen to that might surprise people?
Let's think about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder. I listen to, I love everything. So like ABBA, I love ABBA.
Yeah.
I mean, I know like that's not very surprising. Everybody loves ABBA.
Yeah.
Like even like Little River Band or like, I've been getting sort of for the last few years going through a yacht rock phase, you know what I mean? Like with like Player and Little River Band, Ambrosia, you know what I mean? Like those kind of, I love that just really produced yacht rock.
Yeah.
And I've been going through a really big Grateful Dead studio phase, like their records. I love how quirky and weird their records are. And they just have a lot of, some of them are like master productions, like Terrapin Station's a master production, So.
Is there a movie or a TV show that you've been thinking about lately? It doesn't have to be the last thing you've seen.
I know what you're saying because there's a show I think about a lot and I can't wait for the next season, which is Better Call Saul. I just love that one.
Yeah.
I love Mike Ehrmantraut.
Uh-huh.
He's so grumpy, but he's so like exasperated, but just then he goes out and becomes a badass every day. He's like, he's tired, but he's just badass.
I watched Breaking Bad, but I never.
Oh man, have you finished it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a treat for you to go into this because it's a totally different feel.
I know.
It's a totally different feel.
I have friends that love it and tell me how good it is, and I don't.
Yeah.
One of these days.
And you're gonna appreciate like how it intertwines, like some of the story of the characters and everything. It's like,
man, I think that's gonna do it.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Joe. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mike.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
Yeah.
I've seen the news, the people hurting every hour of every single day. Not much a choice, the bread and circus are going down the never-ending maze. When I was young and times uncertain and trouble seemed so very far away, before my eyes could see behind the curtain, I just assumed that good would find its way. Now it seems the world has lost its faith. We're so afraid. Enemy on every other face keeps us enslaved. Where's the truth and who's the trusted? It needs to bleed if it's gonna read. And we're confused, fact or just opinion, are making love to tiny little screens. And people pine for good old time religion, but leaving out the inconvenient parts, like letting go of brotherly suspicion and testify we're one with many hearts. Oh,
That was Joe Pisapia singing The World Has Lost Its Faith, which can be found on Joe's upcoming album Connection, due out this winter. That pretty much wraps it up for episode 9 of Maker's Mic. We'd like to thank our guest, Joe Pisapia. To find out more about Joe, be sure to visit joepisapia.net and help him spread the connection at pledgemusic.com. Also, if you like what you heard here on Maker's Mic, be sure to subscribe and check out previous episodes. Thanks and much love. We'll catch you next time on Maker's Mic.